Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 11 wide receiver rankings and tiers. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. And if you have any questions about week number 11, either ask in the Discord linked in the pinned comment or in the video description or down below in the comment section. We're going to be talking about our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook, a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 11 wide receiver top 30 rankings and tiers. We begin with the wide receiver position at tier number 1. All 6 of these wide receivers are must-starts, in my opinion. At number 1, we have Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills going up against the Cleveland Browns. This is technically a home game for the Buffalo Bills, but they will be playing in Detroit because of the snow. Last week, up against the Vikings, Stefon Diggs had a phenomenal performance. 16 targets, 12 receptions, 128 yards, 19 fantasy points in half PPR, wide receiver 7 on the week, and he's currently the number 2 wide receiver on the season. We just saw the Cleveland Browns defense get absolutely skull-fucked by the Miami Dolphins offense. I fully expect Stefon Diggs to have a huge performance in this spot, as well as Josh Allen having a get-right game, because his last couple of performances have been far from ideal. At number 2, we have Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Dallas Cowboys at home in Minnesota. Back-to-back games as a top 5 wide receiver for Mr. Justin Jefferson. Wide receiver 3 last week up against the Bills. Wide receiver 4 up against the Commanders. Currently the wide receiver number 3 on the season. On paper, the Dallas Cowboys is definitely not the most easy matchup for Justin Jefferson. We did see Christian Watson go balls deep into that defense last week in Green Bay, so I fully expect Justin Jefferson to have yet another humongous performance. When you have a wide receiver with the skill level of a guy like Justin Jefferson, there's no need to worry about the matchup. At number 3, we have CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. I think the Vikings defense doesn't get enough credit. They are a much better defense than I think most people give them credit for. I'm not saying they're the best defense in the NFL or something, but I do think they deserve a little bit more credit. With that said, CeeDee Lamb was the wide receiver number 1 last week up against the Packers in Lambeau. 15 targets, 11 receptions, 150 receiving yards, and not 1 but 2 touchdowns, 33 fantasy points. Wide receiver number 1 on the week. He's currently the wide receiver number 9 on the season in half PPR, despite the fact that he was on a cold streak with Cooper Rush under center. Now, with Dak Prescott back, he's looking to put up yet another top 12 performance. He was the wide receiver 12 in week 8 on bye in week number 9. And like I said last week, wide receiver 1, I like him this week a bunch up against the Vikings. At number 4, we have DeAndre Hopkins of the Arizona Cardinals going up against the San Francisco 49ers in Mexico City on Monday Night Football. It is important to note that DeAndre Hopkins is banged up right now, but I'm not panicking too much. Kyler Murray appears to be a game-time decision that could drastically alter the upside of DeAndre Hopkins. Even with Colt McCoy under center, I am playing DeAndre Hopkins with confidence, but his ranking would obviously take a dip if Murray was not under center. Last week with Colt McCoy, wide receiver number 15, 14 targets, 10 receptions, 98 receiving yards up against the LA Rams defense in LA. The 49ers defense is really good. I will give them that. But ultimately, if Kyler's under center, I think this game could get a little bit frisky, a little high scoring. And I think DeAndre Hopkins should still have a very solid performance. At number 5, we have my guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions, going up against the New York Jumbo Jets in MetLife. Wide receiver number 10 last week up against the Bears after a streak of being a little bit cold. Wide receiver 29, 29, and 94 prior to that. The Giants defense on paper isn't very good. I say this all the time, but Brian Daboll makes them play a lot better than how skilled they actually are. So this isn't necessarily some pushover matchup for Amon-Ra, but ultimately I think he should be a top 12 wide receiver in this spot. And I think this game could be sneaky high scoring if the Giants are really able to put the pedal to the metal, because the Lions defense sucks so much ass that this really could be a back and forth affair. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is the clear number 1 receiver in this spot. Now we move to wide receiver number 6 to close out tier number 1, AJ Brown of the Philadelphia Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. Now, last week, A.J. Brown not only shit the bed, but he was trying to run to the bathroom, and there was diarrhea just leaking out of his pants. He didn't make it to the bathroom. He left a snail trail all over the house. Things were brutal for A.J. Brown. Wide receiver, 93 in half PPR last week, scoring 1 whole fantasy point. 4 targets, 1 reception, 7 receiving yards. Sure, that's bad. Sure, that sucks ass if you played him, because if you needed just 2 points, you would have fucking lost. But ultimately, when we have a player that is as skilled as A.J. Brown, you have to start him, assuming the bounce back is coming up against a not-so-hot Colts defense. A bounce back spot for the Eagles, a huge letdown spot after a big win for the Indianapolis Colts. Now we move to tier number 2. All of these guys are also must-starts. At number 7, we have my guy, Titty Boy T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. I am slightly worried that this might be a sneaky, low-scoring game because the Steelers' defense with TJ Watt is just a whole different animal. This guy's been a top 24 wide receiver over the last 3 games, with Jamar Chase out of the equation for at least the next couple of games. I would assume there are some reports that maybe he's coming back sooner. I'm not too sure about that, but ultimately, T. Higgins is must start here, even up against a tough Steelers defense. The fact that Jamar Chase won't be there gives extra targets for T. Higgins and gives you a lot safer of an opinion on T. Higgins, because now Jamar Chase can't score 4 fucking touchdowns in the game and completely deflate any upside that Higgins has. At number 8, we have Davante Adams of the, turn your volume down, the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Denver Broncos in Mile High. Back-to-back games inside the top 10 at the wide receiver position for Davante Adams. Wide receiver 6 up against the Colts. Wide receiver 1 up against the Jaguars. But this Denver Broncos defense, I almost said Denver Broncos. This Denver Broncos defense is a whole different fucking animal. The Broncos have one of the best defenses in the National Football League. The Raiders had great success, very nice, Manema Borat, rushing the ball up against them last time out, but we did see Davante Adams finish as the wide receiver 15, which isn't a shit game by any means, but I think his upside is limited due to the matchup, which is why he's in tier number 2 for me. Between Higgins and Adams, it is very close for me. Since these guys are all in the same tier, they're all very close for me. At number 9, we have my guy, F1 Scary, Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders going up against the Houston Texans in Houston. This guy put up a very solid performance up against the Eagles in Philadelphia, the number 1 pass defense in the National Football League. 11 targets, 8 receptions, 128 receiving yards, no touchdowns, 17 fantasy points, wide receiver 13 in half PPR. The Houston Texans defense is so fucking bad that I would be shocked if Terry McLaurin shit the bed in this spot. With Taylor Heineke under center, I just feel so much more confident in Terry McLaurin. It's like Carson Wentz absolutely deflated any ounce of confidence I had in McLaurin, but now with Heineke under center and that stupid bastard Wentz on the sideline, I am in love with Terry McLaurin's upside, especially up against such a bad defense in the Houston Texans. At number 10, we have Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints going up against the LA Rams at home in New Orleans. Last week, Olave was a disaster, but if I'm being honest with you, so was the Saints as a whole. That was a very bad game out of the Saints. The Saints lost that game 10-20 up against the Steelers. I can't fucking stand Andy Dalton. I wish that Jameis was quote-unquote healthy. I know he's healthy. Dennis Allen is just lying straight to our face. I would love if Jameis was under center, but even with Andy Dalton, I know his upside slightly capped by him. We've seen such great performances out of him. Week 3 against Carolina, wide receiver 6. He has it in him. The question is, will we be able to see it up against the Rams? At number 11, we have Gabe Davis. Now, I was very nervous about this Buffalo Bills game because I thought there would be 6 feet of snow. I saw a picture a little bit earlier today, today's Friday, of what the field looks like right now, and it's crazy how much snow is there. But, you know, the game's played on Sunday, so they probably could have played there on Sunday, ruining our fun. I know the snow would have been bad for Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, but it would have been very exciting just to watch as a football fan. Gabe Davis now strongly in the top 12 category. This guy is very high risk, high reward. He's very risky because there's games where he is like wide receiver 60, but there's also games where he's wide receiver 13, 12, 1, and 8 this season. So his upside's high, his downside. So his upside is one of those, I use this analogy a lot, it's one of those tall-ass buildings they have in Dubai, and his floor is the basement. But at the end of the day, up against the Browns, again, I think that the Buffalo Bills are going to absolutely skull fuck the Cleveland Browns. I love Gabe Davis in this spot. Now we pivot to tier number 3 at the wide receiver position. But before we do that, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at DraftKings Sportsbook. They've been on your screen this whole entire time. If you are a brand new user to DraftKings Sportsbook and you bet $5 on any sport pregame money line, you receive $200 in free bets if your bet wins. So I'm going to throw DraftKings on the screen right now. You guys can see it. My opinion on this, since your bet has to win, I don't think you should do the NFL. You should do college football. In the NFL, upsets happen all of the time. In college football, it is also the case, but there are much bigger favorites in college football. So here in college football, we're going to scroll down here and go to Ohio State minus 6,000 at Maryland. Bet $5 on Ohio State. Win $200 in free bets if they win. If you don't want to do Ohio State, that's okay. Scroll on over to Florida State versus Louisiana Lafayette minus 2,400. Bet $5 on the money line there. Win $200 in free bets if your bet wins. Again, you have to be a new user to qualify for this offer. And all you got to do is click on the link in the video description and in the pinned comment. I will make this note very important. This offer will not last forever. It will be expiring relatively soon. So make sure you take advantage of it now before it is gone. And then you can't use it. And getting those $200 in free bets could really help you boost your bankroll, make you have a fun time on Sunday or on whatever sport you want to bet on. So at number 12, we have Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel's been a bust this season. He's a bust. Wide receiver 26. Every week we rank him inside the top 12. He has only had one top 12 game on the year, but yet I am still in the scenario where I have to talk about him. The reason why Deebo Samuel is down astronomical from last year is not because he's not rushing the ball more, not because he's getting as many targets. It's because the guy isn't scoring as many touchdowns. He has a very similar amount of targets, like projection-wise. So say he plays 16 games this year. He had 121 targets last year. This year he has 60. 60 times 2 is 120. So a very similar amount of targets. He's still getting the carries. The problem is last year he scored 15 touchdowns. This year he has 3. So that's kind of just the tough scene that we are in right now. The Cardinals defense isn't the best, so I think Deebo could have a bounce back game, but my confidence in Deebo is just not very high. I don't think anyone could tell you that their confidence in Deebo is very high. At number 13, we have my guy Tyler, Boyd of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Again, just like we talked about with Titty Boy T. Higgins, without Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd's upside basically quadruples. It's much bigger. Without Jamar Chase, he hasn't been the best recently. Wide receiver 33, 25, and 3. But I do have some confidence in him. Joe Shiesty is going to be feeding this guy the rock. At number 14, we have Deebo Samuel's teammate, Brandon Ayuk. Prior to week 10 against the Chargers, he was wide receiver 36 in that game. Prior to that, wide receiver 10, 24, and 3. He has that big play in him. And if Deebo continues to sink, then Brandon Ayuk should be rising like my cock in the morning. Now we move to tier number 4 at the wide receiver position, headlined by Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos going up against the Las Vegas Raiders at home. Last time out up against the Raiders was actually Courtland Sutton's best game. 7 targets, 5 receptions, 52 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. That's the only time he scored a touchdown this season. The Denver Broncos wide receiver core is absolutely decimated like my asshole after I eat a bunch of Taco Bell. So I fully expect that Courtland Sutton has a big performance here. Obviously, the reason why he's not ranked slightly higher is because you have to deal with Mr. Unlimited as his starting quarterback, and I don't trust Russell Wilson, but at the same time, the matchup is so juicy. The situation's amazing. The Raiders defense sucks cock. So let's go with Courtland Sutton here, wide receiver 15. At number 16, we have Amari Cooper. Now, I had an epiphany. It cost me 50 at Tiffany. Shout out to Tiffany Stephanie. That is a Drake line from Views. Amari Cooper, his home road splits are insane. Away, wide receiver 84, wide receiver 90, wide receiver 32, wide receiver 67. At home, wide receiver 10, 4, 11, 24, 6. So, what is my thought process on this? Because this game is technically away, but it's not in Buffalo. It's in Detroit. And technically, Cleveland is closer to Detroit than Buffalo is. So is this a home game? I don't know. But what I do know is that Amari Cooper could be in for a big game here because they're going to be having to pass the ball from the behind. The problem is, and why he's not ranked higher, is because the game's technically away, and this guy has only been a top 32 wide receiver once, and he was wide receiver 32 in that game when he is away. Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver numero 17 in this spot, tier number 4. He has had 2 solid games thus far this year, wide receiver 6 and 5. He's better, in my opinion, with Matt Ryan under center. The Eagles' defense concerns me, but the Colts are going to have to be throwing the ball a lot, and Michael Pittman is their number 1 target. That's why I've got him at wide receiver 17. But if I'm keeping it 100% with you, I'm keeping it 100% occupancy here. Opacity? I don't know what the fuck the word is, but if I'm keeping it 100 with you, I don't really trust Michael Pittman. But let's be honest with you, we're in the tier where it's like, I like Courtland Sutton, but I don't trust Russell Wilson. I like Amari Cooper, but I don't trust the fact that it's away. I like Michael Pittman, but I don't trust Matt Ryan. That's the kind of range of receiver we're in. Now at tier number 5, the trust gets even lower, but the upside is still pretty high. Wide receiver 18, Devontae Smith. This guy just took an absolute dump on the Washington Commanders. 8 targets, 6 receptions, 39 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Wide receiver number 29 on the week, 11 fantasy points. That was his best game in a while. Devontae Smith is a lot like one of the wide receivers that we talked a little bit earlier with Gabe Davis. He's the number 2 on the team, but he has that upside to go fucking nuclear. But his downside is also really bad. He has really down games as well. Just looking at the first 3 games this season. Week 1, he's wide receiver 133. Week 2, wide receiver 30. Week 3, wide receiver 1. So while Devontae Smith is risky, I like the matchup against the Colts. That's why I rank him here at 18. At number 19, we have Kadarius Toney of the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Los Angeles Chargers in LA on Sunday Night Football. Second game in a Chiefs uniform last week up against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home in Kansas City. 5 targets, 4 receptions, 57 receiving yards, 2 rushes, 33 rushing yards, and 1 tug, 17 fantasy points, wide receiver number 11. There are so many injuries on the Chiefs. Juju's not playing. McCole Hardman's not fucking playing because he's on the IR. So many injuries. They're going to have to throw the ball to someone, and this LA Chargers defense is absolute dick cheese. It's Swiss cheese. There's holes everywhere. Kadarius Toney should be in for a solid performance. He should be. The issue is, how much trust do we want to throw at him? Because we're going to see more Sky Moore. Travis Kelce might get 5,000 targets. They still have a good running attack. So there's question marks, but I do love Toney this week. At number 20, we have Garrett Wilson, the other Wilson, in New York with the Jets. At Foxborough, at New England, back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97 games inside the top 15 at the wide receiver position. Last time out against the Patriots, 7 targets, 6 receptions, 115 receiving yards, 15 fantasy points, wide receiver 15. Even though Zach Wilson basically is so bad that he wouldn't even make the roster on the Helen Keller School of Blind and Deaf. At the end of the day, Garrett Wilson is still going to get force-fed targets down his throat. So, even with the matchup being scary, little spooky against the Patriots, even with Zach Wilson being awful, I love Garrett Wilson in this spot. At number 21, we have Jacoby Myers, the other receiver in this game of note, Jacoby Myers of the Patriots. Jacoby Myers is better, in my opinion, with Mystic Mac Jones under center. He hasn't been super consistent this year, currently the wide receiver 32 on the year, but he has been consistent at being a top 32 guy. He just hasn't really cemented himself as a top 20 receiver like I thought he could this season. The Jets defense is incredible. So I'm not trying to shit on the Jets. The Jets defense is great. I think this will be a lower scoring game, but I think that both Garrett Wilson and Jacoby Myers are such key pieces in the passing attack that even if they don't throw the ball at a crazy clip, they will still be able to get theirs because they are the key targets in this offense. Number 22, we have Wiki DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers going up against the Ravens in Baltimore. DJ Moore, we've seen the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. Over the last 4 games, wide receiver 8 in week 7. Week 8, wide receiver 5. Week 9, wide receiver 50. Week 10, wide receiver 64. He's the best option in this offense. The Ravens defense has gotten better, but a lot of the best receivers are on bye this week. All of Florida's on bye. You got Tyreek, Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, Waddle, Godwin, got a lot of receivers on bye that I really, Zay Jones, that I really like. So it's tough. It's tough out here at the wide receiver position. This week at 23, we have a guy who I just boosted up my rankings, fucking attached him to a rocket, sent them up to the moon, Darius Slayton, because of the matchup. Darius Slayton just took a shit on the chest of the Texans. 4 targets, 3 receptions, 95 receiving yards, a touchdown, 17 fantasy points, wide receiver 12, and now he gets a defense that is just as bad in the Detroit Lions. Darius Slayton should have a big game. Realistically, he's the wide receiver 1 right now. But they could just run the ball so much that could fuck him over. But I do genuinely think this is going to be a higher scoring game. So I like Slayton a ton. At 24, we have Rondale Moore. My opinion on Rondale Moore is pending what we hear on Sunday and Monday about the other players on this team. If Kyler plays, I'm confident in Kyler, or in Rondale. If Kyler doesn't play, I'm still confident in Rondale, just not as confident. But the biggest issue is that Hollywood Brown might be returning in this game. If Hollywood Brown comes back, then Rondale Moore's upside tanks. Wide receiver 7, 21, and 18 over the last 3 games. The Niners defense is tough, but I still think Rondale Moore can get it done. The issue is Hollywood Brown going to be playing, or is he not going to be playing? We don't know. So that's definitely something we'll be talking about a little bit more on Sunday. Now we move to tier number 6. This is where things start to get real scary. Darnell, here comes the money of the Chicago Bears going up against the ass cheeks defense of the NFL, one of the worst, the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. Darnell Moody's been seeing more targets, so that's great, and he's got a great matchup. Problem is, Justin Fields could take over by just running the ball for 150 yards, running in 3 touchdowns, and then Darnell Mooney's left out to dry. Cole Kmet could also score 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, and Darnell Mooney is shit out of luck. SOL. But again, the matchup is so positive that I'm going to have to ride with him as a top 25 receiver. Number 26, we have my guy, George Pickens, wide receiver 23 last week up against the Saints. The guy's talent is immense. The targets haven't necessarily been there because Deontay Johnson just sucks in targets at a very effective level. Pause. But George Pickens still looks really good. Scored a tug last week. Bengals defense isn't the best. I like Pickens, but problem is, the downside is that this might just be a snoozer, low-scoring game. 27, we have Adam Thielen of the Vikings going up against the Cowboys in Jerry's world. Adam Thielen continues to get so many targets. Outside of week 1, where he had 4 targets. 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 7, 7, 7 targets. But he has basically just been like wide receiver around 32 every week. Like last week against Buffalo. 7 targets, 5 receptions, 49 yards, wide receiver 48. So the thing with Thielen is he's never really going to fuck you over, but based upon what we've seen, is he really ever going to take you over the top? At 28, we have Joshua Palmer. He really depends on if we see Mike Williams as well as Keenan Allen play, and if they are actually healthy or not. Like, are they going out there to be duds? Like, oh, it's a distraction. Or are they going out there to fuck up the defense? That's the question. If we hear that, oh, Mike Williams is like kind of healthy, Keenan Allen's kind of healthy, or maybe one of them misses, then I like Palmer a lot more. But based upon the information we have right now, I kind of believe both of them are going to end up playing. At 29, we have Deontay Johnson, another guy that just wrangles in targets at a incredibly effective, he's very effective at it. 5 targets, 4 receptions, 63 yards, but he's just wide receiver 40, 52, 45, 47, 37, 75. He's cracked the top 30 once all year. But he keeps seeing so many targets that you have to just galaxy brain and keep thinking to yourself that, oh, he's got it in him. He has that game in him. He's getting so many targets. We got to keep ranking him inside the top 24, but he just never shows up. Wide receiver 30, Hollywood Brown. If Hollywood Brown is playing, you got to rank him high. The guy is so good when healthy. D-Hop being there obviously hurts. Rondale Moore looking so good also obviously hurts. But still, this guy has top 10 upside any given games. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying today's video, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. And if you have any questions about week number 11, please ask down below in the comment section. I love you guys all so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your guys' day. Make sure you check out DraftKings Sportsbook. Link in the video description down below. I love you guys, and as always, goodbye.